First thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with the pillion seat. That way if I screw it up, it's less of an issue for me, right? A couple tools you're going to need to remove the original foam and cover is a pair of pliers and a flat blade screwdriver. And you just start prying on the staples. Work your way in there, try and get them out without breaking them. It's tedious, just work your way around. All right, once you get all the staples out, you just unwrap your seat cover. The foam is held on by a spray adhesive, which you will also do that with your new foam as well. So you're just gonna gently peel it off the pan. In the kit that you receive from Seat Concepts, they give you a little instruction manual, but more importantly, in that instruction manual, they give you the recommended stuff to use to attach the new foam and cover. So size of staples should be no longer than 1/4 inch or 3/16 or 1/4 inch. And they want you to use T50. In my case, I chose Arrow Staples T50 size, 1/4 inch. And they may actually be a little bit long. I may have to go source some 3/16 inch, because what you don't want when you re-staple, you don't want the sharp ends of the staples poking out the other side and goofing up your foam, and have that in turn poke through and end up screwing up the cover. Okay, that's all it is. There's the old foam off. The foam for the Africa Twin that is included is a fair bit thicker, right? I don't know that I'll do anything with the pillion seat, because that'll just make it much more comfortable for any passenger. That'll just make it much more comfortable for any passengers to ride on the back of the bike. So I may not do anything with this. This foam is going to go on there just like that. But first, before I can do that, I need to clean up the pan, and I need to spray it down with some spray adhesive. And I'm just going to clean this up with some soap and water. Then you gotta dry it off. Seat Concepts recommends using 3M Super 77 as your spray adhesive. And I'm just gonna spray down the pan and then fit the pad to the pan. But I'm gonna do that outside. Don't do that inside. You just want a nice uniform, even amount. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it dry for a little bit until it gets tacky before I put the foam on it. In this case, for the pillion seat, I'm going to start with the end that faces the rear of the bike, because that's kind of where it's pointed. On the front seat, I will start with the part that's up on the tank and work my way down the seat that way. But I start with this just because the cover basically has like a little pocket, and that will help hold everything else on while I'm stretching the cover over.
It's worth noting that the use of the spray adhesive is less about gluing the foam to the seat pan than it is more about just holding the foam in place long enough to get the cover on, and then the cover itself, once it's stretched and stapled, is what holds the foam in place.
Just work your way around the seat so it ends up being very even going around. I'm giving myself extra room in the back. I'm sliding it up just a little bit more in the back so I have more play in front to get this lip of fabric over the edge, so I have something to staple. See how I have that seam right here, nice and even with the top of the foam. Once I have that done, now I'm going to put a couple of staples in here, right here, and just start working my way around. You don't have to use an electric stapler or a fancy pneumatic one. You can just use a hand stapler. Just make sure it's a heavy duty one, or else it's not going to drive the staple through the plastic, this hard plastic pan, and you're not going to get a good bite. You don't want the staple sticking up above the fabric. You want it nice and flush. You also don't want it too far in to where it cuts the fabric, because that's going to lead to tearing and everything. Like this one, you can see how it didn't go all the way in there. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm going to use a hammer and tap that in. Now that is done. Now we're going to put a couple staples directly opposite on that side and work our way around. All right, got the beginnings of it. Now we're just going to work our way around, make sure we have enough fabric to loop over the edges and not get any wrinkles. That little safety thing doesn't always allow you to get right up in there, so because of all this crap's in your way. So we're gonna have to get inventive here. Staplers have this little safety mechanism right here. Notice my hand is nowhere near the trigger when I'm messing with the safety mechanism, but this has to be pushed all the way in before the trigger will fire a staple. And to get that all the way down into here, you got to get past into this little ditch, basically, is what it is. So it's kind of hard to do that. The other staples 18 gauge, and the stapler is much wider. I'll give you a comparison. This versus this, plus the biggest difference is this part does not stick out that far. This is where the staples come out, versus this sticks out a lot farther, so I can get down into this ditch around on the seat pan. So that's what it took. You don't have to use a pneumatic stapler. You can even take a lot of time and nail the staples in by hand. Well, that would take a lot of time though. You can use an electric stapler. Just be really careful of your fingers, because you're having to hold the fabric taut while you're stapling. So keep your fingers out of the way. There it is, pillion seat's done, ready to go back on the bike. Now it's on to the other seat. Okay, here we go. Round 2 with the main seat. This one, I'm assuming, will be much easier to staple than the other one, because the ditches aren't as deep except for right in here. Everything else is very easy to get to. Up around here, back through here, much easier. Only issue I'm gonna have is maybe this piece of plastic on either side getting in the way of the stapler, but I mean, Honda was able to do it. Obviously, they stapled this down. So this seat has almost 24,000 miles on it. It's the OEM seat. It finally started breaking in at about 4,000 miles, I think. After about 120, 150 miles, it starts getting mighty uncomfortable, and you got to stop to get off the bike and stretch. Sometimes even before that, just depending on what kind of riding you're doing. And if you're on a long stretch of pavement, or even, you know, like on a BDR or something, if you're on a long stretch in the saddle, you really should be stopping every hour or so just to keep your mind fresh. Okay, now I do have a discount code. I don't know where that accent came from. I do have a discount code for you all to use on seatconcepts.com. If you are in the market for a new seat, why not just get the best that you can? Made in America, made in Idaho actually, by hand. And there's a lot of bikes out there to where you can buy the whole thing already pre-installed on a pan, so you're not having to do what I'm doing. But why do that? Why not just go for the extra, you know, the extra work and really get involved with your bike, right? And do the kit like I'm doing, because a full seat is not available for the Africa Twin. So you're just getting the foam and the cover, but you still get to choose all kinds of options. But get on to seatconcepts.com, and at checkout use discount code EAM10, and you'll get 10% off your purchase. That's pretty cool. And these Seat Concepts is not cheap either, so 10% is actually
10% off is actually a pretty good deal.
One thing that Seat Concepts does include is a plastic sheet, and what that is for is a water barrier, and that is supposed to go in between the foam and the cover to help water from building up on the foam. And it's meant for wet climates, sort of like the Pacific Northwest. I am not going to use that. I have a couple of years and 24,000 miles on the bike, and the OEM foam still looks brand new. These are my grubby fingerprints just from having dirt on them and touching the foam there, but it still looks brand new. And you guys have seen my videos. You know, I'm riding in rain. I'm around water. You know, and it hasn't affected the seat at all. So I'm not worried about a water barrier. I forgot to mention when doing the pillion seat that once you get the OEM foam off the pan, is you want to inspect the edges of the pan and make sure there aren't any sharp edges or like mold lines or things like that. And if there are, just take some sandpaper and sand them off so it's smooth, because over time that can wear through the foam and then the cover, and you're going to get holes in your seat. This pan and the pillion pan were both really good, so I'm not going to have to worry about sanding. This thing is all clean now. I'm going to take it outside and spray it with the aerosol adhesive, let it get tacky, and then we're going to put the new foam on. We're going to do the front first, because the front has a little bit of a cup that fits into. Make sure that gets in there. Just got to work it right on in there. Get the foam centered on the pan. Have a look around the sides. For the front seat, you want to start with the part that goes up on the tank right here. If you get to the end while you're working your way around and you don't have quite enough room in the back, it's okay. Just pull some staples and repositions. Not the end of the world. So not a big deal. But you want to start in the front so you can actually have something to pull against. I use extra staples in the corners just to hold things nice and tight. Okay, now the front and back are done. Now we're gonna go around the sides. Did I get myself? Nope. That'll look cool on video anyway for a blooper. More staples are better than fewer staples, because what you're doing is you're spreading out the tension on the fabric over a much greater surface area the more staples that you use, and you're much less prone to having rips and tears over the life of the cover. So don't be afraid to overuse your staples and just have like a full line stitched around the outside. Yes, this is a pneumatic stapler. Yes, I have an air compressor. If you end up with any flaps like this, Seat Concepts recommends to simply just trim it and then staple off the excess. There is a Seat Concepts seat installed. I'm going to go through and trim off excess and staple those down and put this sucker back on the bike. And then I'm going to get geared up and go for a ride. If you're looking for a decent staple gun for really inexpensive, I just picked this up at Harbor Freight. It was like 35 bucks. I mean, yeah, you do need an air compressor with it, but this thing, I used it for the whole thing and it works great. It puts the staples in at exactly the right depth, and it's having to go through some pretty hardcore plastic too. It just uses 20 gauge wide crown staples, stainless steel, and I was using 1/4-inch staples, and not one of them came through and poked through the other side. So that's perfect. This is the Seat Concepts does recommend a specific model number from Harbor Freight of a staple gun. It doesn't appear that they make that one anymore, so this one is Harbor Freight item number 58222, I think is what it was. And it's a cheapie, but it works great. I had to swap out my air chuck on the bottom for one that would fit my hoses. Other than that, fantastic for very little money. Let's go put this thing on the bike. I usually set my seat at the low seat height. That clicked again. There it is.